It is the final word, Women's World Cup Daily, day 23, Australia versus England. The show is brought to you by Lacuna Sports. If you are a woman or a girl playing cricket, you can focus on your game because Lacuna will have your kit covered. Firdose Moonda joining me, Geoff Lemon. Here we go. Day 23. Tell us about the game, Firdose, please, in the space of 30 seconds.
Well, England haven't won the World Cup is my my quick summation of it. But really what we saw was England getting off to a great start, 55 without loss in 8 overs. Then a proper go slow, just 26 runs between overs 20 and 30. And they ended up asking Australia to chase the highest successful score against England at a World Cup. And Australia, well, they did, because that's what they do.
They did, and they did via an absurd partnership. I mean, these kind of things happen with Australia, I suppose. There's the old, if it bleeds, we can kill it bit. And when you've got Australia 4 for, what was it, 4 for 60-ish, 4 for 64, you haven't won that game, as Pakistan found to their cost. But you're well in. And when one of those 4 wickets is Beth Mooney, this is the other bit, the fire putter outer, the rescue merchant, the Gary Sweeten police rescue going abseiling down the bridge. She's one of the 4 to go. You're thinking, well, okay, there's a possibility, there's an opportunity for England here. And then that's it. They didn't get another wicket. 180-run partnership between Annabelle Sutherland and Ash Gardner. Absurd the way they put that together. Gardner 104 not out, Sutherland 98 not out, and it was 180 at well better than a runner ball as well. There were issues with England. The spinners bowled too short all day. They got pulled so many times. I lost count of the number of pull shots to balls that weren't super short, but they were just short enough to go back. Whether the dew was an issue, like there didn't seem to be any sort of purchase off the pitch for England spinners, but those errors were there, but it just looked so easy. And for a team that's 4 for not that many, it shouldn't be easy. The pressure should be on. You've still got the best part of 200 runs to chase, and they skipped it. They canted it. And there was Sutherland initially being quite counter-attacking as well, going, okay, I'm going to make sure that you guys, you England players, don't feel good about this situation. I'm going to come down the pitch. I'm going to drive over the offside, played that big slog sweep over the leg side, and kept the scoring going quickly enough that England very soon felt like they were on the defensive again, despite having felt like they were on top at 4 for 64.
Yeah, also what was so interesting about the Sutherland-Gardner partnership is the different scoring areas. So you mentioned there Sutherland scoring on the offside, a lot down the ground and a little bit through mid-wicket. And then it's almost like the reverse wagon wheel if you look at the way Gardner scores. A lot behind square. I think it was 39 of her 100 runs coming behind square, so almost 40% of them. And it makes them unstoppable, right? There's no gaps that you can plug. There's nothing you can really do as England. Of course, we've seen certain characters getting really upset in the game. Today was Sophie Eccleston, whose face, at times looked like it was just going to explode. And I know she's quite an animated character and does get quite emotional, but they really did seem to just run out of ideas and not know how to stop Australia. And I think that's the dangerous thing, is that Australia are never beaten. We've seen their lower order come to the party several times this World Cup. And I actually don't know if we need 10 more days. I think we're done. I think we can give them the trophy and be like, thanks, that was great. They just don't have a weak spot.
Or just let other teams have a shot at Australia. This is like, why faff about having everybody play everybody? You just go, it's like, I don't know, it's like the arm wrestle champ at the bar, or whoever stays on the pool table all night because no one can beat them, or whoever can drink the most shots. The contenders can rock up. Every team comes, they play one game against Australia, they lose it and they go home. And if you beat Australia, then you're the world champions. Something like that seems like the way to go at this point, because they are a team that have these moments of vulnerability, though. This is the thing. And it's just that no one's been able to completely make them pay for those moments. They've found a way to wriggle out of the jam, and they've got almost all of their players up and running. So they're missing Elisa Healy. She's got this injury. She's missing now. Will she be missing at the semi-final or the final time? I don't know. So Georgia Vol comes in, didn't do anything of note, particularly today at the top of the order, smacked one very, very powerful boundary down the ground and got out, but, going across the line and got bowled, but that happens. But the key thing I thought today was that Sutherland made runs. So Sutherland hasn't made a run for the entire World Cup. low scores in every innings when she's had to bat thus far, and just didn't look right, looked sort of out of sorts coming out to bat in those other games, but was taking wickets, had 12 wickets coming into this game. Well, guess what? She's got 15 now because she took another 3 today, and none more important than that one up top. Now, an Australian bowler getting Amy Jones out cheaply is not an unusual affair.
No.
It's not an event of note in the career of Amy Jones. It tends towards expectations rather than exceptions. But in this particular instance, that fast opening partnership you talked about, where Tammy Beaumont was laying into them, Jones did a bit in support. She'd only got to 18 of that 55, but that they put on in those first 8 overs where things were flying along. But it's the end of the ninth when she gets out, and it's a really good ball from Sutherland that angles in, gets some seam away, and Jones is nowhere near it across the line and loses off stump. And that's when Australia go, okay, you had your fun, you had your little flurry, and now we're going to peg you back ruthlessly.
Yeah, Sutherland's been so good this tournament as well with the back of the hand slower balls. So I think we saw that much later in the innings when she bowled Emma Lamb, and that we know that that type of bowling has been so successful at this tournament. I think you're right in that she needed to show us both sides of the game, and I'm really glad that we were able to see that today. But also maybe a word on Alana King's bowling, because 10 overs, 1 for 20.
Many words. You have as many words as you like. That's an absurd spell. It's an absurd spell, and bowling a lot of it to Sophia Dunkley, who is a fast scorer. Like she's a plus 100 strike rate kind of scorer by default. She'd barely scored off her first 30 balls.
Yep, exactly. Ended up 22 of 48 balls. So I'm not been convinced about her throughout the tournament, but the way that she got out, and it wasn't in the end to Alana King, it was to Sophia Dunkley, and it was such an absolutely horrible, horrible shot. She came all the way down, completely missed the ball, decided she needed to quickly kind of get herself back into her crease. It was so ungainly in the end, and she was stumped off the bowling of Ash Gardner. But I don't think, to me, she's not having a great tournament, and I think England need to kind of look, it seems like a ridiculous thing. They've only lost 1 game, but every game, their middle orders looked slightly problematic. And I think they need to start to think about that. The semi-final, the final, potentially one of them will come against Australia again. They will have to figure out what they're going to do there, or they're just going to get really lucky. And we're going to sit here on the 2nd of November talking about them as like the most unlikely team to win a World Cup who then won a World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, Australia turned the screws at the right moment. So Heather Knight looked fluent, and she's played so well in a couple of innings at this World Cup. She played maybe the shot of the day almost. There was a Sutherland one later. The punt, the drive on the up from Sutherland through cover point was absurd. But the one where Heather Knight came down to Sophie Molyneux to the left arm spinner and drove so effortlessly over mid-off, like one of those strokes where it looks like she hasn't even hit the ball. It was timed so beautifully. And then the very next ball stays home. Could have come down the track again to this one, but it's because it pitches, quite a long way in advance of her, but it's flatter and it sort of skids off the pitch, and she tries to play it off the back foot and misses and is out LBW on review. And then Alana King, anything for 20, 10 overs, whatever for 20 would be good. 1 for 20 is fine. But when that one is Nat Sivabrunt, that's always at the moment the key for England, and it was just so pivotal when it happened because it was early. Sivabrunt's only on 7, and in the end comes down the pitch, tries to go a big shot, skies it, and that means that nobody else dares to have a look at Alana King aggressively through the rest of that spell. So from that point on, they were suffocated England through the middle, and then that pressure tells with, like you say, Dunkley running past one, Emma Lamb getting bowled by Sutherland, and then Alice Capsey had a bit of fun, which is good to watch when she's able to do that, and Charlie Dean did some repair work there, so they made 38 and 26 respectively. But enough wickets were down early enough in the innings that Australia were able to keep pegging away, end up getting them 9 down with Molyneux getting Capsey, and then with Gardner chipping in, and then there was that run out of Lindsay Smith, who was nowhere near it in the end, as that was the ball coming back in, and the throw. I'm trying to remember whose throw it was. Was it? It was Molyneux.
It was Georgia Vol.
Had that ping at the stumps.
No, it was Molyneux.
It was Vol's throw to Molyneux, and then Molyneux's throw to the stumps, where she could have run in and tried to scoop the bails off, but she wasn't quite confident she would make it, so she went overarm and luckily hit the target. So 9 for 244 by the time all that had happened.
Yeah, it just didn't look like enough. And actually, I was expecting this to be a higher scoring game. Talking to somebody who was at the ground, just around how flat they thought the pitch was, and that they thought many more runs would come. I mean, this is the same. Is it the same surface that we saw Australia score 300 against India? No, that was that Vizag. All venues are the same to me now, but we really
They've all
do
blurred,
need.
yeah.
They're all blurred. But I really thought, I mean, I thought this was nowhere near enough. But then Australia being 16 or 24 for 3, not 16
64
for
for
3,
4, yeah.
24 for 3,
Mm,
64 for 4.
mm,
I thought, oh, hang on a minute. This could get really interesting. So Phoebe Litchfield's never been out in the first over in an ODI career, and then suddenly gets bowled by Lauren Bell, who I really think is
mhm,
having an exceptional tournament. The way she's getting the ball to move, we know she's remodeled her action. She's working on the in-swinger, this one to the left-hander. It moved away a little bit. I thought England have got as good a chance as I suppose Pakistan had an excellent chance against Australia. So New Zealand had a pretty good chance against them too. But this looked like a side that could actually run through them, particularly because we've seen Lindsay Smith be so successful. We've
mhm.
seen obviously Lauren Bell. We know that Natsiva Brunt's bowling again. They've got Sophie Eccleston in the ranks. And just to see it become so easy for Australia, that to me tells me this gap that we keep talking about, the gap's closing, the gap's closing. Like,
Mm.
I don't think it's closing. I think the gap between Australia and everyone else is maybe just widening.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, the teams that Australia plays far less often have a better chance against them, like Pakistan the other day, because there's less familiarity. When they play England, they know England. They know they've got England's measure. They beat England as a regular thing these days. It hasn't been competitive for a long time, and people can point to that Women's Ashes series in England that was tied on points in the end, but that relied on Nat Brunt going on one of the most audacious and absurd tears in the history of one-day batting. She made 400s in 5 innings thereabouts, and did that almost literally single-handedly. No matter how good a player is, they can't play like that consistently across a career unless their name's Bradman, right? It just doesn't happen. So the position that England are in now, I mean, Natsiva Brunt said at the end, oh, we should have got about 280. I mean, you're welcome to have got 280. They chased what you made in 40 overs. And that included dicking about with trying to massage players to the 100 at the end. So, which we'll come
Yeah.
to in the Hall of Fame. But, you could have got 280. They would have won in 46 overs instead of 41. It's the way that they were going at that stage. So I don't know. I don't know what an opposition can do about Australia, because it was just such a well managed, like good tempo chase with Sutherland doing the early punching, and then Gardner punching more late, and that's why they ended up on quite similar scores through the back part of the innings. They had that gamble with Alice Capsey coming on to bowl and over. Gardner smoked her for 3 4s in a row. She also bowled too short. All the England spinners bowled enough short balls that the Australians were able to smear pull shots through the offside on a regular basis. And I mean, in the end, I don't know why they didn't go back to Lindsay Smith earlier, perhaps because she'd at least looked decent against them. She got the early wicket of Vol with one that kept very low, and Vol went across the line and missed it. And she beat Elise Perry in the air and got a leading edge that went back to the bowler. So, Smith ends up bowling 8 overs, 2 for 43, which in the circumstances is pick of the figures. It might have been worth trying something, because it looked like a fait accompli from about the 30th over, right? Australia were going to win this chase, and it certainly wasn't going 50 overs. So you didn't need to worry about who was going to be bowling the 49th if you're Nat
Which I
Sciver-Brunt
think
at
they
that
were
point.
worrying
So,
about, right? Because that's what
yeah.
Lindsay Smith does now, and that's
But
just that
there's a
strategically
lack
that's
of
all.
adaptability.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
from England, you've got to be more dynamic in your thinking, and that was something that I wasn't 100% convinced about with Sciver-Brunt in terms of captaincy, in terms of sort of tactical. She's a wonderful player. I don't know if that necessarily translates to being a wonderful captain. So Australia, in the end, did it easily in terms of the table. They're on top of that now. So if South Africa beat them, Australia and South Africa play their last game against one another. South Africa could go top if they beat Australia. If they don't, if they did that, Australia would finish second. England can't go past them, even if Australia loses that last game, because net run rate, the gap is too much to make up in one game, I suspect. So, and that leaves India and New Zealand will be tomorrow. That'll decide fourth spot between those two, unless it's a washout, in which case Sri Lanka could leapfrog them, because, again, there's too much net run rate to make up. Hall of Fame is going to be an interesting one today. We'll come to that in a moment. Lacuna Sports, they are the company that makes cricket kit for women and girls so that it fits properly and so that it's fit for purpose for the different needs that women and girls have. And particularly with teenage girls dropping out of sport, the global figure is estimated to be about 70% of girls who are playing sport before they reach their teenage years have stopped by the time they get deeper into their teens. And there are a lot of reasons for that. And part of it is about being seen. It's about body image. It's about being judged. It's about social anxiety, all of these kinds of things, and having the right equipment, having the right things to wear to ameliorate those problems is a big part of keeping girls in sport, which then has positive benefits for mental health outcomes, physical health outcomes, and so on as they go through life. So the Mill Hill Finches, that's a cricket team that Lacuna worked with Anisha Dissanayake, who's the Middlesex women's team leg spinner. So she founded a team in North London. And because they had young girls, they did a design workshop with Lacuna so they could get together and have the team work on the tops that they wanted to wear, make the templates, and get feedback and let the players feel like they had ownership of their kit. And so that's the sort of thing that can make a team want to stick together and make players feel like they're really part of something that where they've got the authority to make the decisions.
Yeah, very important. Reminds me of South Africa at the T20 World Cup last year, where they all embroidered their friends' and families' names onto the inside of their collars so that when they put their shirts on, they were remembering who they played for. Very, very, very cute.
Well, let's take a break, then we'll have the Hall of Fame. It's the Final Word Daily, the Women's World Cup Daily, day 23. Hall of Fame today. Walk us through it, Firdose. I think we're thinking the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be those ending exchanges between Annabel Sutherland and Ash Gardner, because they were both racing to 100, and it was Ash Gardner who got there first. She got to her century. I think there were 11 runs left to win when she got there. So then suddenly there were 8 or 7 runs left, and Annabel Sutherland was on 92. So she would have to hit the next couple of balls for 4, but also she needed to be on strike. So the delivery after Ash Gardner gets to 100 is a waist high full toss, which she just defends. And I just remember thinking, imagine being in such a commanding position. You're chasing a game, you're chasing a record total against a team at a World Cup, and you can just defend a ball so that your mate can get to 100. And so she does this, and Sutherland then gets on strike the next over. She thinks she can hit the ball for 6, and she ends up like miscuing horribly. Heather Knight has to kind of try to take the catch over her shoulder. She does get there. The ball spills through her hands. They get 2. So now it's becoming a case of, does she hit 4? Does she try and take 2 and then hope to hit 4 to get to 100? And in the end, I felt really sorry for her because she did try a couple of things. But when the next over happened, I think the conversation between the two of them was like, let's just finish the game. So Ash Gardner hits the ball for 4 and the game ends, and Sutherland's unbeaten on 98 and doesn't get to a century. But I really think they could have dragged it out a bit longer. They could have just really made England think, this is how good we are.
I never know how I feel about these things because I can genuinely understand different points of view on it. Like, it always makes me a bit uncomfortable, and we saw some of this during the last Men's World Cup when you see players nursing someone to 100 from like 30 runs out. You know, when it was at that Bangladesh India game when Kohli needed something like 27 of the last 30, something like that. When it's that, it feels too much. It feels like taking the piss. But and when it gets closer, because you could see this happening from a long way out, you had Sutherland. There's a point where Sutherland was on 91 and Gardner was on 81, and they needed something like 28 more runs to win. So almost exactly the number of runs that would have got both players to 100. And then Gardner smacks a 4-4-2 football formation and catches up with Sutherland. They're on 91 apiece. And then they sort of go single for a little bit. And then it's Gardner on 96, Sutherland 95. Gardner hits a 4 and goes to 100. So that's the bit where your part of the story is coming in. So she's on 95. She's got, and that's when the 3, Gardner blocks out the rest of the over. On 100 even, she blocks out 3 balls in a row. And then you've got Sutherland on strike with 95 and trying for the 6. The drop catch was unbelievable. I mean, Heather Knight's held on to harder chances than that. It was hard work to get there, but not necessarily to hold it. And it somehow twisted through her hands as given the angle that it came down at. but then you've got, okay, well, so Sutherland's come back for 2, so she's on 97, and she tries to drill the ball straight and feels obliged to take the run, even though there's only 1 on offer. So that's 4 balls left in the over at that point. And I think she was just embarrassed to, like, I think there's a thing where you don't want to seem greedy, right? You don't want to seem egotistical. You don't want to seem like you're making it all about yourself. So given there were 4 balls left in the over, and at that point it was 1 run to win, it was like Gardner would have had to block them all. And if somebody accidentally bowls a wide or something, well, then the game's over anyway.
Yes.
And so I reckon Sutherland felt too self-conscious to let Gardner block 4 balls in a row, because then it would have been, doing it once was one thing, but doing it 2 overs running was something else. I reckon she just shouldn't have taken the single. If they were, I mean, genuinely, if you're, like I said, from 30 or 40 runs out, it feels weird. But if you go, okay, you're literally a run away from winning. You've got all these wickets in hand. You've got 10 overs to spare. There's no way you can lose the game. You can afford at that point to turn down a single. But there's this real fear of, what will people say about me? How will it make me look? And so in the end, it's better, it's easier in a way to be Alex Carey in Christchurch and be 98, not out. But you get judged for tons. Like you do. I do see the other side of it, that 100 people will point at your stats column and people will say, well, you haven't made 103 years. And the 98 not out doesn't count in those sorts of arguments. And you get judged at the end of your career on how many hundreds did this player make versus that one. And I think it's acceptable within small margins to take the personal bit. You've done the work. You're the reason that Australia's going to win the game. I don't think it's unfair at that point to say, you know what, I'm going to turn down a single, even if it means that somebody's going to make a nasty comment about me underneath my Instagram post.
No, and I mean, there's one player who springs to mind immediately when you talk about hundreds and being judged on hundreds, and that's South Africa's Test captain Temba Bavuma. Went a really long time with 1 century to his name, and many fighting 50s, a couple of 90s that no one remembers.
And
People remember
95 against Australia. Remember that one? And that was one of the ones that everyone was like, well, he hasn't made hundreds. Yeah, he made 95 in a Test match they won. So
no, exactly. So I mean, I would have done it, if only to just keep rubbing a little bit more salt in the English wounds and saying to them, I mean, I think England are really lucky to be where they are. Yeah, exactly. I mean, to be where they are, I think they're quite lucky. I think they're 2 matches they should have lost. One, Bangladesh, and the umpiring thing, which I'm never going to get over. The other one, Pakistan. And I don't know. I think that the points table flatters them, to be fair. So just for a little bit of niggle, I wouldn't have minded seeing it. But all in all, I don't think anybody's going to forget that Sutherland has had a remarkable tournament, that she is a big contributor to Australia getting to, and I'm just going to say it, the final, because I think they will get to the final. Maybe we'll be wrong this time next week, but I don't think so.
Yeah, it's a pretty safe bet at this stage, but I reckon it could have been Gardner in that situation to say no singles until, say, the 5th ball of the over. Have a couple of swings at it. You've got 3 balls to have a lash at it, and see if you can hit a boundary. And if you don't, we'll take the one at the end of the over, and you can finish it off. There would have been no harm in doing that and making sure both players got there. But performative humility won the day one way or another.
Elite humility.
Australia, yes. Australia carry on. They have not been beaten. England had not been beaten until this point, but they have now. They've both had a couple of washouts as well. So that's where we are, with Australia on top of the table. South Africa 2nd, England 3rd, India 4th at the moment. But that game against New Zealand will decide if they stay there or if New Zealand swap places with them. That will be tomorrow. We'll bring it to you, of course, because we make the Women's World Cup daily. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/thefinalword. Please consider jumping on with us. You can get the show without the automatic ad breaks. You can become part of our online community. You can get involved with all of the stuff that we do, which involves playing matches in different countries and around the world and all kinds of other fun things that go on. Thanks to Lacuna Sports. Check out their link in the show notes and see what they can offer for women and girls playing cricket. And that's it. Thanks to Firdose Moonda for being my company today. I'm Geoff Lemon. This has been The Final Word. We'll see you soon.